Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and continue working through group foundations, group dynamics. Now that we've looked at some of those foundational studies throughout our history that help define group theory, we're going to finish talking about some of those defining characteristics of groups. So one reality as we continue to kind of talk about norms, a reality of norms and conformity and some of these issues is deviant workplace behavior. This is voluntary behavior, voluntary being a key word, voluntary behavior that violates significant organizational norms and in so doing threatens the well-being of the organization or its members. So this can be very dangerous things like playing with a forklift and causing an accident that could get somebody seriously hurt, or what some might consider minor things, but just have a negative effect on workplace culture and productivity, like the picture here, sleeping under your desk. So there is significant potential for deviant workplace behavior to negatively affect an organization, negatively affect a group. If you have somebody that is expressing some of these behaviors in a family setting or a church setting, it can be very divisive. It can be lead to a lot of tension and conflict, things that we don't want to be characteristic of groups that we're a part of. And the reality is it is likely to flourish where it is supported by group norms. If the group norms are not strong enough, or if they're too low or too wide to allow for deviant workplace behavior where it is acceptable, then it is much more likely to flourish in that setting. Now, moving on from norms, we also have status. So what is status? Status is a socially defined position or rank given to groups or group members by others. So it can be a position given to an individual group member by the rest of the members of that group. It can be a status given to a particular group by the other people in an organization or by just observers of that group. Within status, it always develops into a hierarchy. So there is somebody that is kind of at the top of the status structure, and then it just kind of tiers down below that. And so within a group that's really well thought of, that's highly thought of, that can create great work satisfaction and great productivity if people really strive to be a part of a group that has a high status in the view socially of those around them. But it can also create conflict within a group itself. If one group member has a really high status and other group members have very low status and it doesn't line up with productivity or work done in the group, it can really create conflict in that group setting. So what determines status? Status is determined first by the power a person, or if it's a whole group, a group wields over others. And so this power can be kind of derived in a couple of different places. It can be derived in a person's ability to contribute to a group's goals. So if a person is just an all-star member of the group where they are just doing phenomenal work, that can really elevate that person in the mind of the other group members, and it can often be positive when that person kind of gets elevated. You have to be careful that you don't put unrealistic expectations on that person, but identifying somebody that's really contributing heavily to a group's success can be really empowering for the group morale as a whole to have everybody push forward in a positive way. But it can also be based off of an individual's personal characteristics. So somebody that just is likable, just is charismatic, can often be good, but if they are at the same time not contributing to the group's success or to accomplishing their goals, but just they have a really likable personality, that can also create that conflict. One of the things that I hear often with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old and a newborn in the house is that this phrase that any of the parents listening will be all too familiar with: that's not fair. And that's a natural instinct, right? I didn't teach my son to say that's not fair. He had a pretty natural inclination to that determination. But oftentimes he's wrong because it is fair. It's just not computing in his mind. But with a group setting, when somebody has a very high status that is in many ways unearned by their productivity towards the group goals, but based on personality and likability, the people that are functioning towards the group goals have an innate feeling rise up in them of that's just not fair. It's not right. That's not how it should be. And it can be a big source of conflict in group settings. So this impact of status, high status members of groups are often given more freedom to deviate from the norms. Now, we're not talking about deviant workplace behavior, but they have the ability to kind of do things outside of expectation without it really rocking the boat too bad. And so again, this can be really positive if they're really contributing to the group's goals and they have an idea that they run with. The group is often more understanding if that idea ends up not being the best, and is excited if that idea ends up really pushing them forward. However, if the status member allows them to slough or just do things outside of what the group expectations are, then that can create conflict and friction in the group as well. The interaction among members of groups is influenced by status within the group. So there can often be a deferential treatment by members of lower status to members of higher status. Again, things that you want to watch if you're managing people in a group setting. You want to be careful that this doesn't negatively affect group behavior or lead to things like conformity or groupthink in a way that's not helpful and not good for the organization as a whole. If there's an inequity in the group, whenever that's perceived, it can result in various types of corrective behavior. So sometimes that deferential treatment is the response, but other times it can result in gossip or talking about somebody behind their back or undermining the group's goals as a whole in an effort to undermine that person who has a high status in the group. So there are definite things to watch out for, as especially as the inequity between members of a group grows over time, if that were to happen. There can also be cultural differences that affect status. The cultural differences can be present if there is a multicultural company where you got people of different cultures working together, where different cultures value different things. There are cultures that highly value being elderly and gray-haired, and some cultures that don't value that. And so there can be challenges there within the cultural setting if it's a multicultural company. If you are just happen to be doing work in a different country, then it's important to know the cultural norms of the country you're working in so that you can understand the group dynamics well and what things are going to affect status, what things are going to affect norms, what things are going to affect conformity. That way you might behave properly and in a way that you will want to in the group setting. Lastly, we're going to talk about size, how size affects a group. There are realities to different sized groups. Typically, smaller groups are faster at completing tasks. So if you have a big group, assigning tasks to smaller teams can often get things done quicker. Individuals perform better in smaller groups. There's more accountability. There's less chance of kind of blending in or hiding in the background and just kind of allowing others to do the work when it's in a smaller group setting. Large groups are consistently better at problem solving. The more people you get involved, the more ideas you have, the better chance you're going to land at the best solution to solve a problem. But you can arrive at that at a much slower pace in a large group. Then there's this reality called social loafing. One of my coworkers has a motto: "No one likes a social loafer." It's true. When somebody expends less effort in a group than as an individual, when they decide to let others do the work and they can generate positive momentum off of others' hard work, that is called a social loafer. In this picture, the person I would identify most likely as the social loafer of this group is a gentleman in a blue shirt on the back row that looks like he's just staring out the window. He could just be thinking about something, but in the context of this picture, let's assume he is unengaged in the problem that they are trying to solve and just there because he has to be. That is somebody who is social loafing. Now, people might exhibit this behavior for a number of reasons. People can hide and blend into the background because they're lazy, because they don't think that it will affect them. They're not motivated by the goal. They have varying concerns in their life. And sometimes it's just by personality of being unconfident, that they don't want to speak up. They want to hide in the background because they don't think they have anything to offer to the group. So when you see this behavior in a group that you're leading or in a group that you're a part of, try to dig into why that is the case. Like I said earlier, no one likes a social loafer, but depending on the reason of why somebody is behaving this way, people can be a lot more tolerant and willing to help somebody grow if it's for a good reason and not just that they're being lazy. So that wraps up our week 1, our module 1, kind of these foundations of group theory realities. So we're going to now have a quick discussion post. Again, a reminder, discussion posts are due on Thursday by midnight, and then the response is due by Sunday at midnight. So make sure you're kind of on the ball with getting through the lectures and the videos early in the week. That way you have time to craft your post and formulate a response. And then we'll go from there. So next week we will begin talking about some of the other realities of groups, things like groupthink and group shift, that are a little bit weightier, a little bit heavier, but we will finish up this discussion post, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Bye.